The Variety Artist, episode 22. This one's all about the best of episodes 11 through 20. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast on your phone or mobile device. It really helps me a lot. Now, this one was tough to edit. There was so much good stuff on these episodes, I had a rough time figuring out what to cut. I want to do a special shout out to all my guests. You really stepped up to the plate. Well, here it is. Great stories, great info. The best of the second 10 episodes of the Variety Artist podcast.
Welcome to the Variety Artist, providing aspiring artists and entertainers with in-depth discussions from top performers from all over the world. So get ready to book some gigs, make some money, and have some fun with your host, John Abrams.
We're going to start with one of my favorite interviews to date. It's maybe one of my favorite podcasts I've ever listened to. From episode 15, Steve Trash, Rockin' Eco Hero.
So when I was probably around 17, 18, probably 17, I might have even been 16, I'm not sure. The Florida Magicians Convention, I think it's called the Florida State Association, had a convention. I'd never been to one. I'd never even met a professional entertainer, a professional magician. But at this point, I knew. This is what I want to do. I'm good at being on the stage. I want to be a variety artist. I study it in all of my free time. I need to know what the secret is. So I hear that this guy, Marvin Roy, whose stage name is Mr. Electric.
That's right, Mr. Electric.
Mr. Electric has been on the cover of every magic magazine that I've ever read. Because remember, I've never met a professional entertainer. So my only connection to that world is through magic magazines, right? In that case, it was Genie magazine, right? Okay, so I realized he's going to be at this convention that I could go to, and possibly, you know, hand trembling, I would get to meet Mr. Electric, right? So I'm like, I gotta go all the way to Florida. Cool, man, I'm doing this. Game on. My friend and I, we packed down there, you know, on our way down. I don't have any money. I'm just a kid, so we sleep in the back of a Ford Courier truck, which I highly do not recommend if your friend is fat and you are tall, but that's a different story. So 16, 17, I was probably on the cusp of college. So I get down there to this convention. I've never been to a magician's convention before, and frankly, I don't really know what's going on. So I'm looking around and I'm hanging out and I'm sort of sitting down, and my friend Alex is sleeping. He loves to sleep in. And I see, there's Mr. Electric. I recognize him from all of his pictures. So I walk over and I'm trying to be totally cool. And I'm not really starstruck. It's just I want to know. And so I walk over and I say, hello, Mr. Electric. My name is Steve. I really want to be in show business, and frankly, I don't have a game plan. I don't really know how to do this. Do you have any advice, or words of wisdom or things? And he looks at me and he's so kind. I mean, he's like, yes. And he says, I'll tell you what you need to know right now. And my ears, they go 10 sizes bigger, right? I'm leaning in and trying not to be really peculiar and weird. And he says, here's the thing. There are literally thousands of magicians. If they want a magician, they have lots of choices. But, and listen close to me, kid, if they want the guy with the light bulbs, they want me. So you need to go find your light bulb. Now, I'm not, to mix a metaphor and use a metaphor, I'm not the brightest bulb in the box, but I knew that I had just been handed manna from heaven, because what Mr. Electric was telling me is be so unique in the marketplace, be just so incredibly unique that they had to ask for you, rather than asking for someone in your category. We have to ignore the tyranny of the or, meaning it's this choice or that choice, because that's a false dichotomy sometimes. Do you have to reduce your impact on the environment completely, or by stopping driving, or can you reduce your impact? And instead of having to make this choice between a false dichotomy, a healthy environment or a healthy economy, that's one of the biggest false dichotomies. You have to choose the magnificence of the and, that you can have a healthy environment and a healthy economy. And the second you see that and is possible, all of these possibilities start appearing to you. But until you recognize the magnificence of the and, you can't even see it. I'm working in Orandamura, which is Japanese for Holland Village. The Japanese and the Dutch had a very long tradition of trading together in the 19th century. And so there's this amusement park called Holland Village, right? And they loved having what looked like, to their eyes, European-style buskers or street performers. So sure enough, I'm in Nagasaki. I've got this big, huge tip. I mean, there's tons of people around me, maybe 200 people or something. So they're at least 40 feet away from me in a 360-degree circle. Now, I'm Steve Trash. I have always performed with a garbage can, a big 55-gallon brute garbage can as my table, and I have a little top on there. So this little old lady, she was so adorable. She was tiny, and not comprehending that there was a show happening, she begins to sort of totter forward, and she walks into the group, and the Japanese people, who are the most respectful, the most mannerly people you'll ever meet, they're aghast, like, what's about to happen? And she just keeps walking, and she walks right up to me, and she looks, and she's tiny. I'm 6'3" without my hat. So I'm like 7. She looks up, and she kind of smiles, and she lifts the garbage lid off, and she drops her nasty noodles right into my table. And I jam the top on, and I look at her, and the audience is aghast. I mean, their eyes are the size of Oreos, because they're like, this woman has just offended this performer. What are we going to do? So I'm thinking on my feet. I turn to the audience and I yell, "Hakushu dozo," which means you clap really loud, everybody. And so everybody claps for the lady, and she totters off. And I pretend like, it's no big deal to have nasty noodles all over everything that's in my garbage can. I have this idea I call it the little librarian, and everybody has experienced this. Is maybe they've come up against a wall and they can't solve a problem. Maybe it's a career problem or a personal problem, and then they just give up. And then they wake up the next morning and they have at least a partial solution. It's because the little librarian was given the responsibility of going and finding the book that had the solution in it. So you put her to work, and she went to work and she found that solution. And I find if you stay open to the muse, that little librarian, that's all she likes to do, is go find creative solutions. That's her job. And if you encourage her, her muscles get bigger. And it can work on multiple problems too. It doesn't just have to be that one. It can be multiple problems, because that's why I say build your life around this. Have the clipboard, which is my favorite, is the yellow pad clipboard, or have the phone. So if you're driving, you don't need to be scribbling stuff. Just do the voice memo thing and write down that idea, because the muse has come to you and she has said, there is something here. And if you refuse the muse, she won't come back. So stay open to her, because she will continually revisit you.
Next up, from episode 17, The Burlesque Dancer and the Clown with Lily Von Stupp and Funny Eddie. For people listening that have never seen a burlesque show, what is a burlesque show?
Awesome.
That's a good description, hopefully. Burlesque is essentially, it's an art form that came out of striptease. It originally came out of parody. Lydia and her Blonde Bombshells kind of turned it more into striptease, because they were performing in, flesh-colored costumes, which looked very scantily clad from the audience, even though they were completely clothed. As it kind of changed and evolved, it turned into the G-string.
Oh.
And eventually into full naked strip clubs. Right now, the resurgence in burlesque started in the late 90s. And to me, burlesque is a combination of a journey or a story, taking your clothes off to music, being an amazing entertainer on stage.
So I'm working at a Beverly Hills place. It's kind of like Chuck E. Cheese, but for rich kids. And I'm waiting outside, and I'm talking to a very lovely lady. She has sunglasses on. She has a little boy. And I'm just talking to her, and we're just chatting away. I'm thinking nothing of anything than just talking to someone. I had no idea who she was. And I go, I'm so sorry. I apologize. My name's Funny Eddie. I'm a magician here. You heard the kids screaming. That was me. It was good. It was good. It wasn't bad.
They were screaming and having fun.
Oh, always,
Controlled
always.
chaos.
It's controlled chaos. My shows are controlled chaos.
Oh, wonderful.
You have to let them, you get them off the leash and just let them have fun, please. So I'm talking to her. I go, I'm sorry, my name's Funny Eddie, and your name? And she goes, Hallie. Then her son said, Mom, tell him your whole name. It's Halle Berry. And of course, I took a couple beats. I go, I love your work.
Yeah.
And she goes, her car comes up and she goes, oh no, I left my money in the car. I go, can I please pay for your valet? And she looks at me and she goes, why? I go, because it is a great story. So she said, thank you, Funny Eddie. And she said my name, and that was so worth it.
Oh,
so
you think she does that everywhere she goes? She's like, oh, I don't have any money.
No, I don't think she does that.
That would be awesome. Let's spread the story that Halle Berry never pays for valet.
Do not do that. No.
Yeah, we're going to spread that rumor starting here.
Spread that rumor.
No.
An exclusive.
No.
Do a thing called the Quentin Tarantino Burlesque Film Festival. Over the years, it's changed its name. It's now been Burlesque Unchained. It's been Inglorious Burlesque. It's been a few different things. After we finished the show, I got an email from a woman who was like, hi, are you the one that produced the show last night about Quentin Tarantino? I have some questions for you. And I'm like, damn it, I'm going to get a cease and desist and I'm not going to be able to do the show anymore because we use music and we do the themes and all of that. It's like, it could be borderline copyright. And if they want to shut it down, they can.
Sure.
So I wrote back and I'm like, yeah, here's my address. And she goes, no, I don't need your address. Quentin would like you to do the show for him and some friends before he heads off to the Venice Film Festival.
Oh.
And I'm like, hey, Eddie, I'm being punked. So I write back and I'm like, yeah, okay, when? And she's like, if we can do it on either Saturday or Sunday, that would be great. Just let me know what the budget is. And I'm like, okay. So I call a couple of venues. I find one that's open for Sunday night. I write back. I go, here's the price. She goes, great. What do we need to do next? Can you send over a contract? And I'm like, I'm going to need the check up front. Because again, I think I'm being punked. I'm like, there's no way Quentin Tarantino is about to pay to see my boobs.
Yeah, you're waiting for the punchline, right?
I am. So she's like, great, you can meet me at my house construction and I'll have a check for you.
Oh.
So Eddie drives me. She signs the paperwork with me, hands me the check. I'm looking at this check with all these zeros on it. And I'm going, I'm going to take my clothes off for one of my director heroes. That doesn't suck. So went and pounded the check at the bank. It was actually a check from him. It was signed by him because he signs his own checks. 3 days later, my entire cast performed for him. At the end of Inglorious Bastards, if you've seen the film, they carve a swastika into all of the bad guys' heads because they're like, you're going to get to live with what you've done. And so at the end of my act, I pull lipstick out of my bra and I draw on dead Hitler on stage. And Tarantino jumped up and went, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. And that is currently on my press clippings. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Quentin Tarantino. One of the things that everybody always says to me about Eddie and I is, I wish I had a relationship like that. And all I can tell people about relationships is find someone that you want to walk with. Find someone that you want to be next to and support so that when one of you is tired, you can pull them forward. And when one of you is getting a little crazy or egotistical, you can pull them back and you can hang out together on equal footing and respect each other.
Next up from episode 11, Supercharging Your Website with Josh London.
From 8 in the morning till 6, 7 at night, I was on the road doing shows every Saturday and Sunday, and it was a lot. I was at that point, I actually had a stock image of what my ideal client looked like. She was 35 to 45 years old. She had usually 2 kids. She drove a black SUV, usually a Yukon or a Suburban, the flex fuel Suburban. Yes. She probably didn't work. Her husband worked either in finance or something like that. And they lived in this part of San Diego and they ate at these kind of restaurants. And I had a picture right above my desk of that. and it reminded me of who I'm working for and who
Right.
I'm marketing to. And it made things like conversion optimization. What colors do I pick for my website? It made creating a branding palette easier because I knew that black and reds wouldn't matter to that person. It would actually turn them off.
Mhm.
So having a website that was clean, white, lots of white space, the Tiffany color,
Yes.
Tiffany, the jeweler, I got that color and I put it on my website for my calls to action.
That's
And-
very smart. So you modeled somebody who's already looking at maybe your market and modeled your website colors after theirs.
And, it's funny, I figured that out when I was actually at Tiffany's. I bought my wife, it was only like $100 ring when we were dating. I couldn't afford the real Tiffany jewelry. But as I was walking out with that little blue bag, I noticed all the women look at me and then look at the bag, look back at me and smile. And I thought, hey, there's something here. They noticed this. So when I actually split tested this, I'm a big believer in data and looking at numbers and seeing what numbers actually produce. And so I had I think it was like a red button and then the Tiffany color button. And I set up a plugin so each time there was visitor A, it would be one button. Visitor B, another color button. Back and forth, back and forth. I got more clicks on the Tiffany color than the other one.
Next up from episode 19, How to Be More Funny. It's Christopher T. Magician.
This was back in the day. I got a new 888 number. I wanted a toll-free number, and I wanted it to spell a word. I wanted it to be something where I just say 888 blank and go and spell it. And there was a program at the time. You could type in any phone number, and it would tell you what words it spelled.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kept I don't know what service, but some service where I was trying to get an 888 number, and they would send you all the possible numbers. And I typed them in, and all of a sudden, Taco popped up.
Huh.
And at the time, so I started as Christopher the Magician, but I Googled one day Christopher the Magician and realized there's a good amount of Christopher the Magicians. It's a pretty common, surprisingly name.
And there's a lot of the magicians, right?
Yeah, that alone, yeah. And honestly, if there's just one Christopher the Magician other than me, that's too many. I don't want more than that. Honestly, if you know Christopher Weed at all, he makes the Showtime tables. I'm pretty sure he's the reason why I switched my name from Christopher the Magician, because he basically took up the first page on Google of the Christopher the Magicians out there. So I guess thank you to him for that, Taco. But so it was Christopher T. Magician, which the T stood for the. But there I was coming up with a phone number, and Taco popped up, and I was like, what if the T just stood for Taco? And I love that kind of humor, just weird out there stuff. And so there was Taco. And then, so that was the last 4 digits. And I still had the first 3. And I just kept typing those in. And all of a sudden, Yay popped up, 929. So, Yay. And so I was like, all right, maybe my middle name's Taco and my magic words are Yay Taco. And then that literally, it was all happenstance. But honestly, I think it's probably the best unintentional marketing thing I've ever done in my life. Figuring out what your character is, number one, the most important thing you could do for your magic. Whether you're a comedy magician, serious magician, kid show, it doesn't matter. Whatever your character is, that's going to influence everything you do in your magic. And for me, I was lucky because I was in a phase where I was trying to figure out what is my character going to be on stage? What is my character? And my mother called me and she said, your nephew, he was like 5 at the time, he said the funniest thing. He said, why does Christopher get to live up, Uncle Christopher, why does he get to live up in New York City all by himself? And she said, well, because he's an adult. He can do whatever he wants. And my nephew said, no, he's a big kid. Basically, when she told me that story, it immediately popped into my head. I'm just a big kid.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the starting point to everything I've done since. Now I would change it a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm a big kid. I'm a grown-up kid. I'm a grown-up who doesn't know how to be a proper adult, which is true in real life and not in real life. The rule has always been that your character on stage is just the bigger version of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that gets misinterpreted because I will see people on stage being just as boring as they are in real life,
Yeah.
or just being a little louder. Like, oh, I'm talking louder. That makes me a bigger version of myself. But really what a bigger version of yourself means is What are you? Like, objectively speaking, look at the clues of your life and ask what you are. Now, luckily my nephew said that, I'm a big kid, but the clues were there. Like, I don't pay my bills on time, even when I have the money, because I'm not good at being an adult. I got pulled over by a cop, and he was like, your registration's up. Why didn't you fix it when you got the thing in the mail saying you need to do your registration? And I literally said to the cop, I'm not very good at being an adult. And he laughed and luckily gave me a warning. But like, the clues were there. I have a closet literally full of hobbies that I had to take on. The weirdest one, I wanted to do domino toppling. I spent hundreds of dollars on dominoes so I could set them up and knock them down. Like, I spent a month doing that, and now they're in the closet because that's what a kid would do. I get obsessed with something, I buy a bunch of crap, I throw it in the closet.
Yeah.
So like, the clues are there. I should have known. And that's the key, is to, what is your life? You know, if you're a shy, introverted person, that doesn't mean go on stage and be loud and outgoing. It means you can enhance that on stage. You could be an interesting, shy, introverted person on stage. If you like punk rock music, you know, that's going to influence what you are on stage. Are you a Democrat and liberal? Are you a conservative Republican? Those different things are going to affect what you are on stage. And the key to like the answer to the bigger version of yourself means, once you've determined what you are, that's going to influence everything about you, what you wear, what your performing name is, how you speak to an audience, and then like everything down to the jokes you're going to tell, the tricks you're going to do. If you're a shy, introverted person, that's going to affect the type of people you. If you're a tight, uptight, clean freak, you're not going to do a snowstorm necessarily, or a silk to egg, because that's going to crack an egg. That it will influence the tricks you choose to do, or you might do those tricks, but it's going to influence how you do those tricks.
Sure.
So every single decision you make is based on what you are as a person, and that's how you get that bigger version of yourself on stage. You get the trick, and the first thing you ask is, what am I going to say to make this funny? What am I going to say to make this interesting? What am I going to say to make this entertaining for the audience? What are some jokes I can find? Maybe I can find somebody else who's doing this routine and take some of their jokes. You know, that's kind of, we're concerned about what we're saying. And it makes sense, because that's, you know, it's kind of terrifying, the idea. You got to be on stage with this thing. You got to say something.
Yeah.
But I think that's actually the least of our worries. Starting out, I think the most important thing when you face a new magic trick is, what am I going to do with this trick?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I focus on that is because, and I'll use examples from magic in a second, but look at sitcoms. Sitcoms on TV, comedy shows, they're called sitcoms because they are situation comedy. And yes, there are funny lines, there's funny dialogue, but at the heart of it, what is there? A situation.
Right.
So when you have the scene with the guy who, I'm making this up, but the guy who he makes the date with this girl, but oh my gosh, he made the date with the other girl at the same restaurant at the same time.
Oh no.
Yeah, so he goes to that side of the restaurant, he says something to this girl, he checks his, I gotta go make a phone call to my mother, and then he runs to the other girl. And in the process, there aren't gonna be funny lines, but the real big laughs, the comedy comes from this situation where this guy has to run back and make up lies to each person. That's where the comedy comes from.
That's great.
Here's where I think, in terms of magicians, here's where I think hopefully the light bulb goes off. And that is, think about the absolute most famous, classic comedy magic routines that have existed, that people do again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say the vanishing bandana, even though I despise it with a passion.
You and me both.
Yeah, if you're number one rule of comedy magic, everybody, if you're doing the vanishing bandana, burn it. Do not ever do it again. Okay. I mean, I don't mind if you do it because you bought it, but I will sit through any magic show. But the moment that comes out, I'll leave, because I know for a fact you're not going to do it. If you pull out the linking rings, I might roll my eyes and be annoyed that I'm going to have to sit through the linking rings for 10 minutes. But you might surprise me. You might do something interesting in that routine that I haven't seen. But I know you're not going to do that with a vanishing bandana, because it's a recording. Like, you're not going to surprise me with something. So don't do the vanishing bandana. Anyway, Oh my gosh. But I'm going to use that as the example. Like, everybody has heard of the vanishing bandana. But
Yes.
when you think about it, there's no funny lines in that trick. When I say funny lines, I mean jokes. But like in the recording, it's one of the lines that's just fold the bandana in half.
Right.
Well, that's not funny. But the reason theoretically it's funny, maybe if you've never seen it before, which let's be honest, it's, oh my God, I can't say. Anyway, but if you know, why is it funny? It's because you have a banana.
Right.
It says fold the bandana in half, and so you fold the banana in half. That's why it's funny. It's not the line, fold the bandana in half. It's the situation around that line.
Yes.
If you look at paper balls over the head, Slidini, classic, beautiful. You'll probably never get as big of laughs necessarily as you do with that routine. There's no funny lines in that. It's just the situation. The audience is in on the joke. The person on stage has no clue what's going on. That's the comedy. It's not about a funny line. The comedy egg can, where you accidentally, you tip the can over on somebody's head while you're reading the instructions, and then you pull the instruction cards out, and what's the next step? Do not remove the instruction card.
Of course.
Again, yeah, that's not a funny line. But it's the situation. It's the fact that do not remove the instruction card, and you realize, oh crap, I just did that, and now I have egg on this person's head. That's the situation. And that the bottom line is a funny situation, a funny premise, a funny concept with your trick is going to result in bigger laughs than just doing a normal old trick with some jokes. I don't do linking rings for my adult comedy show. And I don't do the egg bag. And I don't do cups and balls. I don't do mice or stream. I could keep going. The reason I don't do those is I have yet to come up with any reason why I should put those on stage. I don't have my take. I don't have my point of view on them. I don't have a way in yet. It doesn't mean I won't someday. But I'm not going to put those on stage until I have a version of them, until I have a take on them that make them interesting, that make them unique, that make them different, that make them worthy of me, that make them worthy of my audiences, and frankly, worthy of magic as a whole. I think if you just take somebody else's routine and put it on stage, I think you're doing a disservice to magic because you're not making it yours. You're not making it you. And so I think a lot of creativity for me, it purely comes from just like pride. Purely comes from I'm not willing to settle. I'm not going to do a routine unless it's worthy of me putting it on stage. And so I think it's that forces you to be creative because, well, I got to do something on stage, so I better be creative and come up with something. But I think the way to be creative is A, don't settle. You have to be willing to come up with new ideas. But B, and it's the same as joke writing, actually. My first joke I ever wrote, I was 18 years old. I was writing a skit for high school. And it involved, it was a mashup of Noah's Ark and it was, an elephant and Romeo and Juliet. It was an elephant and a giraffe that wanted to be in love and they weren't allowed on Noah's Ark because you had to have 2 elephants in love and 2 giraffes in love. And I set out to write this joke. For the first time in my life, I consciously, and I'm still proud of this, like 30 years later. No, 20, how old am I? It doesn't matter. The joke was, interspecies relationships are a huge faux pas. That means if you have faux pas, you don't marry an animal with 2 paws or faux hooves. That was my joke. I was like so proud of that. We did it for audiences. We actually traveled around the South doing it for different, and every time people laughed at it, it was just like this, like the feeling that God creates when he creates. It was like, passion. I loved it. I was so excited. And so from that moment on, I just kept writing jokes throughout my life. And I'll tell you, if I'm working on a routine right now and I want to write a joke for this moment in a routine, I could probably write a joke in about a minute. And it's not because I'm like great. It's because I've been doing it since I was 18. So if you want joke writing to be something you do, start now. And it's going to be hard. It's not going to be great. But 10 years from now, you're going to be amazing at it. Not only because the practice makes you better, but the most important part and the most proud thing I have about myself, the thing I'm proud about most with myself, is that I don't have a voice in my head that says you can't do something. I never say I can't do something. I just do it. And it might flop. It might not work. It might work. But I just do it. And if you start writing a joke now, And with every joke you write, that voice that says I can't do something is going to go away further and further and further.
Next up, it's episode 18. Ready for prime time? Ventriloquist Peter Norgard.
It's actually bugtaler means ventriloquist in Danish. So I'll just say it's to pronounce it in the right language. It's bugtaler. So it means actually a boo means your stomach, and tailor means speaker. So speaking from your stomach. I want to sing with my puppets. Then I thought to myself, nah, you can't do that. And then I saw Terry Fader do it, and I thought, OMG, he's amazing. I can never do that, but I'm going to try anyway. So I just went ahead and did it anyway. He was a great inspiration for me. Yeah.
So you weren't even singing with your puppets before that?
Yeah, yes, I was starting to work with it and trying to put it into routines, but I hadn't brought it on stage yet, because I was thinking, nah, that's too much. Who wants to hear that? Who wants to hear that? And then suddenly he appeared on Danish TV with America's Got Talent. Yes, we get that program over here as well. Actually, the American version, we get that on Danish TV. When I saw him, I just thought, he's amazing. Then I can do it. I'll just try anyway.
And he was super successful, right?
He kind of won the whole thing. So
yeah. And he has his own show in Vegas, so it was slightly successful.
It's just a small gazillion dollar thing he has going there. I think his contract is he just extended it for 5 years for $100 million. This is why I play with puppets. I want to do that. So I keep telling my mom, Mom, he makes $100 million. I was on Denmark's Got Talent. I was a huge fan of Terry. I went to see him a couple of years before that, see the show. I wrote him, hi, I'm a ventriloquist. I'm a great fan. And he says, cool, I'll meet you after the show. And it's just like, really? And he's an amazing guy. He's so giving, and he just loves to share. So I wrote him after I did one of my acts on Denmark's Got Talent. I think it was the semifinal or something like that. I sent him my Elvis act with my Elvis puppet singing. And he wrote back, that's amazing. Call me. And then there was a phone number. I just pressed my phone right away, and I did not know what the time zone was. I didn't know anything, what time it was in Vegas at that time. I just called, and he picked up. It was just
it's like, hello, this is Terry Fader. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And it was just like, and I remember when he said at the end of the conversation, which was ending, he said, sure, I loved your show, and if you're ever in Vegas, let's do a show together. And I just grabbed my calendar right away, and I said, the 4th or the 5th of April. And he said, sure. Both of them? I said, yeah, why not? He said, and I went, yeah.
From episode 16, Ventriloquism is My Superpower, with Mark Merchant.
In the 7th grade, which was still elementary school, and in the 8th grade, which was high school, I had developed my ventriloquism to the fact that I could produce a startlingly real distant voice, and I could only get away with it with a substitute teacher. I would usually be close to the desk, and then I would call attention. I would look up at the speaker and say, what? And then when I would do the distant voice, Mark Merchant, to the front office, and this substitute teacher would, sure, and the rest of the class would be like, man, how does he do that? But I could never do it with a real teacher, because they knew I was a ventriloquist, because I had performed for my class a few times and done, student talent shows and things like that. I was cleaning someone's teeth at Dr. Connor and McDevitt's office to periodontist, and the phone rang, and it was the office manager, and she said, Mark, your mother's on the phone. She says it's important. Now, my mother is a nurse, and I knew she wouldn't call me, so I thought there was something wrong, and I went and I said, hi, Mom, what's up? And she says, Mark, a gentleman from Carnival Cruise Lines named Mike Nett just called and wants to know if you would like to go work on a cruise ship doing your ventriloquism. and here's his number. So I called the number right away. And the way that Carnival Cruise Lines found out about me was I had sent a resume to a lot of places wanting a job in the office doing public relations or journalism related things, because I knew how to do that, and I thought I could write good copy. But on my resume at the time, in the bottom, I put special abilities, magic and ventriloquism.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow that resume got shuttled to someone in the entertainment office at Carnival at the time. In the infancy of Carnival, they had 2 ships, the Mardi Gras and the Carnival, and they offered me a job to come on board. Of course, they didn't tell me I was doing 16 hours of crew staff work a day too, but it gave me the opportunity to, there's still a patient somewhere in an Atlanta dental office with a saliva ejector in her mouth that goes, because she's thinking I'm going to come back, and finish. O.J. Simpson was in the audience one time after he'd gotten out of jail, when I was working a club in the Bahamas in Freeport, and people kept saying, "Mark, you do an OJ joke. He's going to be in the audience tonight." And I said, I pulled a Jim Morrison like in the Doors. I said, "I'm not changing it." And to his credit, he either appeared to laugh at it, and he did not meet me backstage with a knife. So I'm thinking I got away with it.
You lived to tell about it.
Yeah. I love it when there's someone who can take a joke about themselves. Also in the Bahamas, the great boxer, middleweight boxing champion for a while, Marvin Hagler, was in the audience. And I'm on stage with my African-American character, Alonzo. And I'm the specialty act in this review show. So I'm the only one who can really talk to the audience. Everything else, all the music is on a track. So none of the singers could stop and say, "Hey, because they'll lose the track." I'm able to, in a moment, say, "Hey, we need to recognize in the audience a former middleweight champion of the world, marvelous Marvin Hagler, ladies and gentlemen." And of course, the spotlight was on him, and he stood up. He was sitting in King's Row, as they call it in a casino, and waved. And my black puppet, Alonzo, looked up and said, "He don't look so bad. I bet I could kick his butt." And Marvin Hagler, to his credit, started beating his hand on the table, laughing and pointing back like, "Hey, man, you all right?" So I appreciated that. I did a corporate show in Beverly Hills a few years ago, and Buzz Aldrin, the second man on the moon, was sitting the stage right. And I knew some dignitaries were going to be there, and I had prepared. And with my lady character, Zelda, I said, "Zelda, there's Commander Buzz Aldrin." I said, he was third in his class at West Point and the second man on the moon. And Zelda said, "Poor guy, he can't come in first for anything." Which, to Buzz Aldrin's credit, he started laughing. So did the rest of the audience. But they kind of looked at Buzz Aldrin for permission, like, is it okay to laugh at this? Which if it's funny, it's funny. As my friend Jack Goldfinger, a great magician and the booker of talent at the Magic Castle, he said, "Mark, funny is funny, but funny doesn't trump mean."
Yep.
So I make a real effort in my humor to never be mean, to never be mean-spirited. I just want people to laugh. Sometimes people will get upset at a joke, not directed at them, but directed at somebody else. And I never understand that.
From episode 13, School Assemblies and Working as a Team, it's Razzle Bam Boom.
Unique position because we're going out to all these schools so we can actually survey the teachers and the PTA and the principals and just flat out ask them, what shows do you need? What shows are you looking for? What show would you like us to work on? Yeah. And the great thing is, too, is that we can actually send them questionnaires that said, well, what would be in a show that you were talking about? And then keep them informed as we're developing the show. And then the principals all across whoever think that they're part of the show. And they are, because they're helping us create it. So when it actually is released, they're like, yeah, I want that thing I've been talking about and hearing about all this time.
Sometimes the audience places a value on you based on what you look like and what they see with their eyes. it creates a tangible value. I mean, you could be the greatest entertainer since sliced bread, but if you've got something visual that looks really cool and part of the show and educational and really pops in their minds, it increases your value.
We're so used to writing shows for the two of us. We started writing shows for solo shows so we could go out, have a little more diversity, give our customers a little break in the price, but still be working ourselves. We wanted to use the same kind of a two-person thing. So when in my character show, we recorded a voice that would ring, and it's my mom on the phone, and the phone is coming through the speakers so the kids can hear my mom's voice, but she plays like the straight man and I'm the comic, and she's telling me what to do, just like Mark in our show is
actually, I think she's the comic and you're the straight man.
Well, maybe. Okay. Yeah. Well, I think I'm funnier than she is, but that's okay. Fine. Okay. Now I see how you feel. I understand about that now. Okay. We're going to talk about this later.
Welcome to the world of straight man. The other person gets the credit for the humor.
But it worked. The straight man comic works so great in schools because I can play not just the comic, but I'm also playing the student who doesn't know the answer, and I get it wrong. And instead of Mark lecturing the kids, tell them, you've got to recycle your stuff, he can get mad at me for not recycling. The kids can get on his side and point out how I'm wrong, even though they're just learning things for the first time.
Although the kids typically like you and like what you do, and I'm the spoil sport a little bit, although we try to balance it so I don't get booed off the stage, but but the fact that I'm the straight man, in a loose kind of way, Obadiah plays the class clown, and I play the teacher role in a loose kind of way. So I keep it anchored. I keep it in the real world. I keep the show from getting too silly. But he is the one that they like watching and going, you're the funny guy.
Yeah, he's going to go off. And the stronger he holds his base, the crazier and funnier I can get. And I got to tell you something. Mark Beckwith is a fantastic straight man, and sometimes I'm going off the bat and then he turns to me with this stern look and he looks at me like he's supposed to. It's in the script, but he gives me this look and I think, oh crap, I really went too far that time. I'm like, oh no, he's just playing a part there. You got to keep creating. You have to keep coming up with new material, and that's how we end up with 11 shows. And Mark was always pushing me to come up with another show, and I'm like, oh, come on, we have 3 shows. We don't need any more shows. Well, man, if we were trying to rely on the first 3 shows we wrote, we wouldn't be talking to you. I'll tell you that right now. So
wouldn't be paying the rent, yeah.
And you, as a performer, as a creative person, you get fearful. It's like, well, if I write something new, it won't be as good as that thing I've been working on for 5 years. And
actually, there's truth to that. Probably the first 6 months, it's not going to be as good as that.
And it's painful to do that new show for the first time. But the thing is, number one, it gets better, and number two, your audience wants to see you do something different. Number 3, you can get better and better at writing more relevant stuff for your customers. And it makes you just so much more marketable because you go, well, would you like this to this? I mean, we're not just saying, would you like this show, this show, this show? We're saying, would you like a topic about conservation? Would you like a topic about character? Would you like a topic about science? Would you like a topic about art? Oh, okay, art. Let's talk about the 3 different shows we can do for art that might fit into you. We could do the Wright Brothers musical. We could do the 200 Years of American Music or History of Rock and Roll. So it's like they have a choice and then a second choice, and people just love having choices. There were some places we performed at, like 6 years in a row. We did 6 different shows, and then they say, what else do you have new? It's like, come on, you could redo the first show.
Yeah, your kids graduated. From episode 12, promoting your show during your show, it's Robert Baxt.
There are a couple of routines that I do that are absolute gobsmackers. Gobsmacking, that's an English term from London for when people are absolutely fried. Their jaws drop. That's how incredible the mind reading or prediction I've just done is. Mm-hmm. At that moment, when I'm getting that applause, when I hear them going, no way, I say back, yes way. And I know what you're thinking right now. You're thinking, wow, I bet I should get this guy to come to my event and do this stuff for my group of people. Now, it's funny when I say it in the moment, but it also plants that seed in their head. Ooh, that's right, this guy would be good. Everyone's got a camera in their phone these days. And as much as you try to say, please don't take pictures, please don't record, it's impossible to stop. You can ask nicely, you can ask firmly. People are just going to do it. As a matter of fact, it's so strange, this coming generation. As a dad of a 5-year-old, I'm trying to raise him to have social skills. But sadly, in the world today, in 2018 and beyond, people would rather record than be in the moment. Somehow it seems more real to them if it's on Instagram and they have proof that it happened. True. Well, take advantage of that. My table has my banner on it. My backdrop has my banner on it. I have a separate banner with my name and logo on it. And the little catch-all, the dump bucket, has my name and logo on it. If there's any photo or any video that they're taking, there is no possible angle they can take a picture from without their getting my name and website on it. Get this now, I'm on a private plane being flown to audition for a gig, and the guy with me is an actual Duke from England, and this was this had to be the late 80s before everyone had a cell phone. And as we get off the plane, the Duke and I have been getting along great. I've shown him magic tricks. You never know, I might have been invited to the royal wedding. The Duke would remember me and stuff. he needs to make a phone call. And this is before, not everyone had a cell phone in those days. He goes, oh my, do you have any spare change? Huh. And I went, yeah. And I gave him all my change so he could make a phone call. And he went, oh, I'll give it back to you. I went, no. Just so I can have the story that I lent money to royalty. Please keep it. So yeah, that truly, sincerely happened.
From episode 20, Traveling the World on a Ping Pong Ball, it's Michael Troutman.
One of the things that I start with is actually an improvisational exercise that I learned from Tony Montanaro, and it's called rounds. The idea behind rounds is you take an idea or an object, for example, a ping pong ball.
Yes.
And you get in the studio with that ping pong ball and you begin to play. And you don't give yourself any rules or expectations. You just play in the way that a child will play, in the way that animals will play. You hold it, you do whatever you can with it. You look at it and try and envision multiple uses or ideas, and if you apply that same idea to a theme, you go with your notebook or your friends and you say, okay, let's just come up with ideas. What's it mean? What's it do? And explore and try and list as many of the possibilities in the idea or the object that you can find. Once you've got this list of ideas, you look at it and go, well, this one relates to that one, or this one's interesting to me. And so you pick an idea that's interesting and try and follow that path. It's a matter of giving yourself an idea, a thought, and always coming back to that path. So if I'm using the ping pong ball, I played with it in the studio, and the target spinning act that I do is a good example. I got in the studio and I was trying to do create a new bounce act with it, bouncing the ping pong ball off of something back into my mouth. It was very difficult because I wanted to bounce off of 4 or 5 different surfaces so that it would go bing, 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 and back to my mouth. So it had to be very precise, though, with the ping pong ball. I had marble tiles, and they were all propped up at different angles, and it was because it was so variable in where the ball hit and if it was how wet it was coming out of my mouth. And so that sort of accuracy wasn't possible, but I did notice that I was able to hit consistently the same spot on the tile that I was shooting at. And then I made that leap somehow into, well, if I can be accurate with it and I don't worry about catching it, I'm a target spitter. And so then I began to research target shooting acts, and there's plenty of information out there. And so I followed that thread, and in the end came up with this character who came out of that. So it's a matter of sticking with that original thought. What can I do with that ping pong ball long enough to find an idea that has some value to me as a performer, then some perceived value and entertainment value to the audience. One of the acts in that is King Pong's ping pong bullet catch of near death. And do you know what a bullet catch trick is?
I do know what a bullet catch trick is.
To your audience, yeah, your audience probably does. You know, the magician's trick where they have a real rifle and get the local sheriff to autograph a bullet and put it in and shoot it, and the magician, it would go through a piece of glass, and the magician would catch the bullet in his teeth.
Right.
And so I've developed a ping pong cannon that's like a potato gun made with PVC, and I've got a bike pump that I can get up to about 150 psi if I really want to hurt myself. And
so you're really pumping. I've seen the video. You're really pumping the pressure in there.
I try and get it up over 100 psi just because you want that, that much movement and power in it. The bruises happen from time to time if I'm too close. Sometimes you're in a place that you can't be that far away, or the pressure gets it's all very, really it only will bruise if it hits a bone. For me it's part of the reason for doing it, that people look at it and go, well, that's stupid.
Well, folks, that's it for episodes 11 through 20. But before you go, I want to leave you with these final words from Razzle Bam Boom.
Hey, let's hear it for John.
Yay!
Artist, yeah. Variety artist, yeah.
we just wrote you a new theme song,
That's
John.
your theme song there. John Abrams. Variety artist, man. John Abrams. Variety artist, yes you can. Boom.
That's all for this episode of The Variety Artist, but your journey continues on our website. Go to thevarietyartist.com for more strategies, insight, and resources, as well as show notes on today's guest to assist you in your career. We'll see you on the next episode of The Variety Artist. But until then, go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.